Welcome to Veteran Voices, a podcast dedicated to giving a voice to those that have served in our country's armed forces. On this series, which is part of the Supply Chain Now family of programming, we sit down with a wide variety of veterans and veteran advocates to gain their insights, perspective, and experiences. We'll talk with many individuals about their challenging transition from active duty to the private sector, and we'll discuss some of the most vital issues facing veterans today. Join us for this episode of Veteran Voices. All right. Hey, good afternoon. Scott Luton with Veteran Voices. Great to have you on today's episode. So on today's show, we have the opportunity to talk with a veteran that not only has made a very successful transition to the private sector, but he's also made a big splash from an entrepreneurial standpoint. So stay tuned as we learn a lot more. Quick programming note before we get started here. This program is part of the Supply Chain Now family of programming. Find some and subscribe wherever you get your podcast from. All you got to do is search for Veteran Voices and it'll pop up and you can subscribe so you don't miss a single thing. All right. So with no further ado, I want to welcome in our featured distinguished guest here today. I'm really excited about this. Grady Brain, Banking and Lending Technology Implementation Manager with Equifax, but equally as exciting, he's founder and partner at JDog Athens, which we'll learn more about. So Grady, good afternoon. How you doing?
Scott, I'm doing well. I really appreciate you having me. I think this will be a lot of fun.
I do too. I enjoyed collaborating with you earlier, really over the past couple of years, as we were going in and talking supply chain with elementary students, and you've got such a knack with kids and instructing and kind of coaching. So it was neat to see that side of you. And now we're going to learn a lot more about your military background and then, of course, all of your business exploits, which we're really all excited about.
I'm looking forward to it. Definitely here to have a good time. So let's do it.
Okay. All right. So let's get to know you a little bit personally first. So tell us, Grady, where did you grow up, and give us a story or two about your upbringing.
I grew up not too far up the road here in Jackson County, just north of Athens. That area has always been kind of my stomping ground, so to speak, from the teenage years to the early 20s, and pretty much left Athens to join the military, at 24, and did the military thing for a while, as you had mentioned. 6 years active duty in the 82nd Airborne Division, and 6 years in the National Guard, in the 20th Special Forces Group as a direct enabler for the ODAs, the team guys, the Green Berets. And so through those travels, really just was able to see, it sounds like a cliche, but it really is true. You get to see a part of the world that maybe you just didn't think of. And I think that is especially true for my friends back home. They, nothing wrong with that, but they certainly decided to stay home and stay in a little area, and certainly have had their successes on their own. But it was neat to be a part of maybe making history. The overseas campaigns, Iraq, Afghanistan, was a contractor in Nigeria for the Deptartment of State, contractor for the intelligence community for a little more than 3.5 years in various parts of the Middle East for some pretty incredible opportunities and programs.
All right, I got to dive into this stuff, man. You're sharing. I mean, this is exactly why I was looking forward to this. So, for starters, let's back up because I want to go through your military roles in just a second, so we can really kind of unpack that a little bit more. But let's start. What made you join the military? So you grew up in the Athens area, the greater Athens area. You said Jackson County. But what made you join the military?
Let's see. So I joined. All right, let's do some dates here. I joined about April 2003, and before that, you had the Iraq and Afghanistan initial kickoff campaign. My cousin, she married an Army guy, Justin, and so he was welcomed in the family in open arms. And I think he did a campaign in Haiti, if I remember correctly, and just looked up to Justin. He was a great guy. He's from Oregon, so he really, the backwoods, if you will, of Oregon, really kind of meshed well with the family. And so when the Iraq and Afghanistan campaign kicked off, it was kind of a drive, maybe a little bit of patriotism there. Like, I didn't want him to be the only person in the family to put their name on the dotted line. Again, it sounds like a cliche, but it really is who I am. Like, I wanted to raise my hand. So I was young enough, was at a point in my time, I wasn't married at that moment of time and said, it's time to do something. So that was really my main motivator and driver to join, was to go off and do my little part.
Sounds like you've got a strong bias for action, which I'm sure as we talk more later in the interview about your entrepreneurial venture, you got to have it, right?
Just a little bit, but not much, just a little bit.
All right. So I admire that. So you joined the Army in April 2003, right? So you spent 6 years on active duty, all with the 82nd Airborne. Is that right?
That's right. Yep. I was kind of fortunate to spend my active duty years in 82nd. It was
and as we both know, a legendary unit. So before we talk about your role there for those 6 years, what is it about the 82nd Airborne that that just makes it the big, bad, butt-kicking unit that's got such a legendary reputation? So what is it? What's the mystique there?
Yeah. So, it's the 82nd Airborne Division. And so the patch, the unit patch is the AA All-American. And from a historical perspective, it literally was a conglomeration of All-Americans from all over the country, right? And so, forgive me, hopefully our brother and 82nd members aren't going to roast me for this. I don't know the exact founding time of,
That's okay.
of the 82nd, but the reason I even mentioned that is to say back, if I remember correctly, it was kind of a contentious point of time in America, right? So, when they started bringing together people from all backgrounds, socioeconomic groups, to represent the true essence of what America was, it was kind of a pillar or foundational point at that moment of time, and certainly has been continuing on into modern times. So, you couple that with the idea that there's a little bit of cockiness, right? The AR 670-1 is the Army's manual for how to wear the uniform. Even the 82nd guys, again, conventional Army, would have a little bit of attitude in terms of how they represented their beret. So you could always tell a paratrooper, particularly from the 82nd, is just by the unspoken of how they wore their uniform or their beret. All that being said, that with America's Quick Reactionary Force, we were able to basically respond depending on the DRF level that we were on at the time, for somewhere as little, I believe it's 16 hours. I think I have that correct. So the fact that we could answer America's calling anywhere in the world, from the conventional forces at a battalion or even brigade level, really made the 82nd an invaluable asset for the Department of Defense and the Army. Absolutely.
And I'm going to dive more in the weeks ahead into I've never thought about the history from an integration standpoint. I think that's probably a fascinating chapter. But the other thing that you remind me of, and I'm a little bit of a supply chain nerd, but to be able to react anywhere in the world, I think you said 16 hours.
I think it is, yes. Wheels up, 16 hours.
I can't imagine the readiness, the logistics, the supply chain behind the 82nd Airborne, especially after you land and in the days to come as you reinforce position and more of the supply chains brought to bear. So we'll save that for another episode. All right, so within the first 6 years, you served 12, first 6 active, second 6, I think you said with the Guard, right? National Guard?
That's right. Yep, 20th Special Forces Group in Alabama.
So with the 82nd Airborne, what was your official MOS?
So I don't know if I told you this, but I was a food service guy. So I was a cook. Yes. Yep. So I spent 6 years, and that's actually the reason I loved the 82nd was because, no matter your background. And so the Marines kind of have their infantrymen first, that's their mentality, right? That no matter your job, the 82nd kind of had that same mentality in sense of you had to have, from a tactical perspective, you had to have the ability to understand and to be able to, especially attached to an infantry battalion, which is what I was. You were ready for really anything. So it was a really cool opportunity.
All right. So you cut out just a smidge there, and hey, it's no big deal. I bet you're getting some business calls.
Right. Apologize for that. Yes. Sorry.
All good. All right. But really, that belabors the point even more, because when you send the 82nd Airborne into theater, it's got to roll with food and supplies and transportation and everything you need. So that's a vital part, right? What's the Napoleon? There's a famous Napoleon quote. I can't remember it, but basically, you got to keep the Army fed, and you don't get too far on empty stomachs. And I'm butchering the quote, but anyway.
No, I get you. Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about, let's go ahead and talk about your second 6 years, and then I'm going to circle back around with a couple of questions kind of about your entire career in the Army. So the first 6 actives, 82nd Airborne, next 6, tell us about, you mentioned Nigeria, you mentioned some other roles. Tell us more about those second 6 years.
Yep, so you're correct. The second 6 years was with 20th Special Forces Group. So the U.S. Army has, it seems like it's around, 5 Special Forces, I guess, groups, if you will. And then there's 2 National Guard Special Forces groups, so 19th Group and 20th Group. And so 20th Group is headquartered in Birmingham, Alabama. And so I was able to find a fantastic opportunity. First came in as a food service guy, squad leader. And then went into more of a intelligence supporting role for the ODAs from a tactical battlefield questioning, SSE, sensitive site exploitation opportunities. So really enjoyed that second half of my career, and just began to, from the schooling point of view, and just really, as you've said a few moments ago, understanding kind of the logistics chain associated with the various positions and responsibilities. And sometimes you're thinking outside of your role. It introduced me to so many opportunities that you maybe wouldn't find in the conventional Army. Scott, I loved every minute of it. That was really my calling there.
Can you point to one thing that was so gratifying about that role?
Scott, without a doubt, it is you get a disproportionate, a significant plethora of opportunity to make a gigantic impact. So you're giving if you will, the responsibility and the choices you have to make with maybe the limited information has a multiplying effect in terms of the outcome. I just love the fact that there's a lot of correlations in the special operations community to entrepreneurialism, and the entrepreneurial mentality was that you got to think multiple steps ahead of maybe where you are towards your desired outcome, and how to get there using the tools that you currently have available. And that's just really, I've always kind of had the entrepreneurial bug, but that's where it really began to take off.
I love how that you make that connection. But I haven't really thought, having to improvise, which is one of the things I'm hearing a lot of what you speak to, getting creative about solving problems based on what you're facing, while once you solve those problems, the ability to make a huge impact. I mean, there's a lot of parallels there. All right, so looking back at those 12 years, both active and in the Guard, what's one or 2 accomplishments that come to mind that you're most proud of, you might have shared with your family? What are those couple of things that really come to mind?
So I think it would probably have to be, in total experience as in the Department of Defense, wearing the uniform as a contractor, over a 12-year period, I had about 75 months away from the family. And it was gratifying to know that each trip that I came back, and I was very thankful that I was able to, make an impact in my mind, the operations we were able to be a part of. So I don't know if it was one particular moment as much as it's just massively, gratifying knowing that I was able to come back and the positive we did, and through some of the skirmishes and the fights and what have you. Even through all that, just overly thankful, Scott, that could be a part of shaping history, and I'm sure it'll be written about, 40, 50, 60, 100 years from now, whatever. So I don't know that, again, there's any one moment, but with that that gratitude certainly comes the respect of people who paid the ultimate price, of brothers and sisters that we knew. So, but yeah, it's I guess that would be it in a nutshell.
All right, so let's talk more about some of the folks that you served with. When you think back, and I bet there was no, if your career and yours was a lot longer than mine, there was no shortage of folks that I miss that they're with us, and a couple folks that aren't with us that I miss dearly, rubbing elbows with day in and day out, that just had a huge impact, not just on my career, but in general as a young man growing up. So what are some folks, tell us about some folks that you served with, either side by side or maybe some leaders that you served for, that really stick out and you miss here today?
I guess one guy in particular, he's still with us, had a gigantic impact on my career. His name is Zeke Vanderpool. We call him Zeke. That's not his real first name. He was my team sergeant when I was with 20th Special Forces Group. Zeke he was the guy that I really looked up to in the sense of he knew when to be stern. He knew when to give you that rope, and he knew when to let you take that rope, and then, your feet come out from under you because you took that rope too far. And that was in my opinion, the epitome of a leader. Like, he was the guy that knew that, okay, this is a good time for Grady to learn, the collateral damage or the collateral kind of fallout, so to speak, is not going to be overly significant enough to where he can pick up the pieces, enough to where he can sit there and look around and realize that, oh, okay, maybe I took this too far, or this is what I can learn from it, or what have you. I'm that guy that has to kind of understand what the parameters are, the left and right limits, and maybe bounce off them to know that this is how I move forward. And Zeke was that guy, and I still his passion today is helping really rid the veteran suicide and the stigma associated with reaching out to the mental health professionals to say, guys and gals, it's okay to reach out. So yeah, Zeke is that guy that I certainly still look up to this day. He's an awesome guy.
Say Zeke Vanderpool, is that right?
Yes, Vanderpool, great guy out of the Tennessee area. Just I'd drop everything in my life right now if he called and go up there and help him out.
Outstanding. Who else comes to mind, Grady?
Another guy that was impacted significantly by the war. Out of respect for his position in the special operations community, I'll just use his first name, James. James is a dear brother. He was one of those guys that was kind of the same way. He volunteered multiple times for deployments, and just that guy that as a medic, as an 18 Delta, knew so many things. He was I think he was a battalion chief, if I remember correctly. Volunteered for the National Guard, I think at the late 30s, early 40s, went through the Q course in the Special Forces, the Green Beret pipeline. And he obviously made it and earned his Green Beret, but he never let kind of his position with the ODAs, the teams, he never let it kind of drive who he was. And so he when he realized that there was guys like myself that was not afraid to go out there and work and push and earn their kind of spot in the support role, he began to really welcome you in. And so James did that for me. And he was in Afghanistan, several years ago, working some very sensitive locations and missions, and stepped on a pressure plate, and it took his it was his right leg. And so I went to Walter Reed to visit him. And, that was a foundationally shaping and like structurally takes your morals and ethics and shakes them to the core to make you rethink what is important. And so seeing James up there and our fellow brothers and sisters of uniform, or in their uniform, and now veterans, go through the trials and tribulations was just eye-opening. So James is definitely another one of those guys that really, from a leader and then friendship.
When you met with James, and I'm assuming he is finished his service, and then you don't have to share, but was there a singular message that you wanted to share with him based on the impact he had on you?
Oh gosh, that I'll still to this day, to the end of my life, one of my last breath, I'll always be there for him. And without a doubt, I think he feels the same way. He's had a huge impact on my, honestly, where I think success is, his mentality of just never quitting. Even when he was in Walter Reed, just a few months post blast, so to speak, he didn't have that defeated mentality. He didn't have that mentality of, what the heck am I going to do now? It was like, I'm not the whole person I am anymore. It was, well, these are the cards I'm dealt, and this is how I move forward. So
he's up for the next challenge, it sounds like.
He still is, and he doesn't quit. And so I think that's part of the special operations, and really that's, as an American, that's kind of the cloth he's cut from. And just knowing that letting James know that I'm always there, and I think without a doubt he would probably feel the same way. And so that's the strong brotherhood that you just, it's pretty rare to get these days. And so I'm forever thankful for it.
We're going to talk about your transition in a minute, because I'd love to pick your brain there and get you to share some of your experiences. But you mentioned a real serious issue that's unfortunately been an issue for far too long, and we're still trying to wrap our head around it and figure out why and do something about it. And that's, of course, veteran suicide. and for that matter, it's permeated into the active ranks, which I know you and I probably both have had our finger on the pulse about. I don't want to put you on the spot, but why do you, I mean, so I'll share, maybe it'll help me ask this question. A lot of what I've experienced and what I've seen is especially, and it's gotten a little bit better, but as veterans have been underemployed and not nearly as gainfully employed, that really did not help with the transition, and certainly didn't help to feel like what you described earlier in your career, where you're making such an impact and you're sharing all of your knowledge and your skill sets, and when you're not being utilized, especially to the tune or to the degree that you are in active duty in your leadership role, it can create a depression. And I think that's one of the things I've observed, especially as I've seen a lot of my fellow veterans really struggle with their transition, and it persists. And so while we've made some strides from more and more companies get it, and they've seemingly gotten better at their outreach and recruiting and hiring and good gainfully employed roles. But that's just part of the equation. What do you think that we're missing out there that is preventing us from really effectively addressing this sad problem?
I'm probably in the same boat as you, that I've read some data, tried to read a little bit of literature, but by no means do I pretend to have a conclusive understanding of the problem. But I think that fundamentally it's the idea of belonging, right? I think that you find commonality of maybe transition or difficulty of transition from groups that require a strong bond, whether it's in the ranks of the law enforcement community or firefighters or really other public sector roles, to where you have to be a cohesive unit, no matter your background, no matter your differences, to accomplish a mission, right? And I think that when you begin to not necessarily know and be prepared for your transition, you don't maybe think that, okay, that's not going to be there when I transition. So maybe it's a little bit of the re-gearing initially to say that when I transition, yes, my brothers and sisters will always be there. But maybe the civilian world is a little different. So maybe it's the first step is understanding that there's a little bit of a retooling there, an expectation. But also, I think you touched on it. It's the labor perspective. How do you translate? Being a bit tongue-in-cheek from the next part. As an 11 Bravo, an infantryman, that you go out and face the enemy, right? So how do you put that on a resume? And so it's really working with the nonprofits out there. And there's been some great national organizations, Equifax. We're trying to stand up a Equifax business resource group there for veterans. So it's really just plugging into holistically across the board, nonprofits, organizations that are trying to understand, the veteran unemployment aspect of it, to say that if you see an infantryman or woman that says, okay, this is what I've done and this is what my experiences are, that maybe you can kind of help them as a hiring manager say, okay, well, if they're trying to say this, what are they trying to say? Or are they really getting the message across, right? And so that, I think the hiring managers, and maybe a bit of going out on a limb here, can certainly work with other nonprofits as well to make sure that if they're speaking a language, maybe there's a little more commonality there than what they thought initially. So from the hiring point of view, there's maybe a little bit of work that we need to do there. And really, I guess maybe a third piece is the veteran just to know that things are going to be different, right? And that's okay. Different is great. They were different when we left the civilian world and joined the military. They were different when maybe what our friends have seen and where friends were living while we're in the military. And they're going to be different after we leave the military post-uniform. So maybe just a few thoughts there that I think I've seen and maybe experienced myself that have been identified and I try to relate to.
Well put. And going back to what you shared that Zeke was working on, which is it sounds like is really encouraging veterans to embrace the fact that things may not be okay, and it's okay to share that, so you can get the help and assistance and the mentoring or whatever it is that you need, so that hopefully you don't choose some of the choices that are being made. So kudos, and I really appreciate you taking the time to kind of walk through those three things. and sharing that with folks that may either be new or maybe they're like so many folks, they don't know why it's taking place. So your perspective is very helpful, and big kudos to Zeke for doing something about it in his post-Army career. All right, so let's talk about transition. We both already have touched on that. I'd love to know more. Tell me about, so now you're with Equifax, well known, everybody knows Equifax. You've got a great role there. I'd love to learn more about that, but let's talk about your transition. Tell us a little bit of that story.
So left the National Guard, and right before I left the National Guard, I realized, it's time to go back to the formal education route and really finish up the education. So, maybe that's another interesting part. Just because you've tried, it took me 3 times to get my bachelor's, and so when I finally did, I didn't let off the accelerator. So I got my undergrad Bachelor's of Science from Norwich University. It's the oldest private military college in the country.
While you were in National Guard? Okay,
yep.
Gotcha.
And so took about a 2 to 3 month break and did my first master's program in Master's of Arts, Diplomacy, and International Trade and Commerce from Norwich, and then rolled up literally I was graduating from my Master's of Arts at Norwich and got my acceptance call into my MBA program. So literally no break in between. Did my executive MBA at Cornell. Really enjoyed that opportunity.
Ivy League.
Well, it's not
Grady.
Too bad from a country guy here in just north of Athens. So
nice.
I enjoyed a tremendous opportunity, and that's one thing as a bit of an aside here that I think the veterans, particularly the enlisted, but certainly the officer ranks as well, the Ivies are really want to talk to the veteran community. People have gotten this mentality, and I understand that the Ivies, there's no way that I could be competitive in the Ivy ranks. It's the creme de la creme of the personnel and the people who are trying to get in. And I guess there's probably a lot of truth to that, but the reality is the Ivies and maybe really all public education, groups, public and private, really want to talk to the veteran community, right? There's great opportunities through the VA for the post 9/11 GI Bill, and so I guess I went off on a bit of a rip there. But from that perspective, veterans should really be looking for those because those opportunities for formal education because they're there and people want to help. So I'm sorry, I think I went off on an exit ramp there.
No, you didn't. So the first thing you established is how you were able to earn and build this educational pedigree, especially, undergrad, master's, and then executive MBA at an Ivy League institution. So that's, you obviously felt that was a really important component of your transition, correct?
It was. And so I finished the executive MBA and was working for Google at the time here in the Atlanta office. Really enjoyed that opportunity. And then
well, hang on. Let me ask you about that. Because was Google your first official job post-military service?
So I think you could say that. I think that's probably a fair assessment. I was a contractor, as I'd mentioned a bit ago, in the intelligence community in Nigeria for the Deptartment of State. So while that was private sector, my first regular job, I guess, would probably be the Google role.
Okay, kind of untethered to your military credentials. Yes. Was a Google. Exactly. Okay. All right. Well. Okay, we're going to circle back to your contractor roles. All right. So Google, how did you make that connection? Because I think a lot of folks can benefit from how you found your way into working for a company that's on the tip of everybody's tongue.
Scott, just I guess a little bit of stubbornness. Just never gave up. And I know that again, then it sounds like a cliche, but I've always been that guy that is up for a challenge. A little bit of the underdog growing up, and I just never gave up. Mom and Dad always told me that again, it sounds like a cliche, you can do what you want, but the reality is it's absolutely true. And I think I'm kind of living that now. So just networking. I networked with the veteran groups. I used LinkedIn. I went to LinkedIn and found those hiring managers, and sometimes they wouldn't write back. Sometimes they would write back and say that I'll keep your resume, and sometimes they would write back and engage. I try to look for other veterans who were maybe in that role, hiring manager, and just kind of pick their brain. And sometimes they were busy, sometimes they weren't. Sometimes they said, let me let you talk to my friend XYZ. And so introduction was made, and just over time, I kept that role and I kept that approach and found the role eventually at Google.
I think one of the challenges a lot of veterans, at least I've experienced and heard about is that as they leave the military service, many of them don't have a business network. They may not even have a LinkedIn account, much less, thousands of connections. And in some cases, I've heard where even in the last year of service with folks that are retiring, their commanding officer has not allowed them to get out and network and spend some of their time with the industry associations or whatever it is. How can you speak to how important it is when you don't have that network already, whether digital or just the Rolodex? How important is networking in that? When you've got that gap, how important is networking? Speak to that a bit.
So I was that guy. I didn't have the network, a little bit of foolishness on my behalf. And I think that the Department of Army and really Department of Defense, when I transitioned from active duty in 2009, was beginning to understand that, okay, we need to give guys and gals time to transition. And more particular, we need to help them understand what the transition is. So I really didn't have a network. I didn't have a defined group. And so I went to LinkedIn, made 1,000 mistakes and just kept going 1,001 times. And so that really, honestly, stubbornness, is my key there. And so I worked to plug into some local, veteran organizations in the Atlanta area of Atlanta, Bunker Labs, 4 Block. And just through sheer tenacity and focus and networking was able to find the groups and find people that said, you need to talk to this person. And so that person introduced me to here. I saw this person 3 networking events later. They introduced me to this person. This person said, I really need you to talk to the vice president of this company. This person had a veteran friend or family, and literally the network grew from there. So that would be one thing that I would absolutely unequivocally say, that the veteran community must go further than they think from the networking perspective of what they think is good enough. And it just never hurts to have that positive representation on LinkedIn, understand your 10-second elevator pitch. Because look, once the veteran or anybody begins to figure out and know that where their place is and that they're rocking along or they're busy, they certainly probably want to help other people themselves as well, but they're probably going to be busy. So the person that's approaching them is probably going to make sure that they're on point. So it's kind of that, put yourself in their shoes to understand maybe why folks are looking for that quick, why that 10-second elevator pitch is important. And when you really begin to kind of think in that direction, you begin to contextualize and know that, okay, these are the steps I need to be taking. So that network is gigantically important. Best thing and probably the only thing that I could recommend that they must do going forward.
Well, and follow up. What I'm hearing you talk about, and of course I've known you before tonight in our interview here, and I've got one of the things I've observed is that you follow up, and when you're getting all these connections and these offers of connections and these opportunities, maybe they're vetted, maybe they're not vetted. What I'm hearing you say is you're going to take that shot. And it may not go anywhere. You may not hear back, but you're gonna take all of these openings, and you're gonna put an iron in the fire. And that's a ton of work, but that sounds like it's critical to your transition.
I think that's right. It is a ton of work, right? Most days, and I kind of heard this before. Again, oftentimes I say this once and I'll say it 1,000 times a night. It sounds like a cliche, but the reality is it works. The whole adage of, start early in the morning and finish late at night, that's literally my day. I'll start, wake up early. Well, to me, it's early, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning and go to, 11:30, 12, 12:30 at night. And so I'm one of those guys that really has to get my at least 6 hours of sleep to function well. So, but yeah, it's just that grinding it down, that pushing it forward but I'm respectful. Obviously, there's that fine line, right? Being respectful. But I'll follow up with them. I'll make sure that they understand that I'm respectful of their time. And I think once, again, like I was talking a bit ago, when people realize that you're going to be respectful of the ask that you're going to make, that you're just not going to sit there and say, this isn't for me, that you've done your homework to at least know what you're getting into, people are willing to help you.
All right. So last question about your transition, and then we'll talk about what you're up to now. Was your transition easier or harder than you had anticipated, let's say a year or so out?
1,000% harder. When I transitioned off active duty, I had maybe a couple of years of formal education from undergrad, Valdosta State University there in Valdosta, Georgia, and made the determination at that point in time, I don't need formal education to get where I want to get. And there's people that have just been massively successful in whatever frame or context of that word that means to that person. But I also realized that it was now a challenge. You know, I had family, my first daughter at that moment of time, my wife and I, and I began to realize that, you know what, there's more things that I want to show my family, you know, particularly my children, right? So their dad persevered, their dad pushed through, got their undergrad and a little bit of education along the way, through thick and thin. You know, I started the business that we were just talking about, JDog Junk Removal and Hauling of Athens, you know, and plugged into a few more startups in the area, in the Atlanta area. So a lot of pokers in the fire, but you're right, you've got to have that tenacity, and I think that's been the kind of payoff for me.
So now let's talk about Equifax and what you do there in your proverbial 9 to 5. That cliche is deader than a doornail these days, it seems. And then I want to talk about what I'm really excited about as a fellow entrepreneur, what you're doing with JDog Athens. So first off, with Equifax, and goodness gracious, a banking and lending technology implementation manager. That is like 5 levels above my pay grade. I can't imagine what you need to know to implement, you know, tech projects. So tell us more about what you do in that role.
Sure. So you know, the incident, the breach that happened in 2017 is certainly not lost on people who have been impacted, right? It was like 145, I think, plus million individuals. Since then, we've got a fantastic leadership team from literally the top down. Mark Begora, the new CEO, Bryson Kaler, the Chief Technology Officer, Izzy O'Nelson, the SVP of Banking and Lending Enablement, Chris Kramer. All of these individuals have been either new in the roles or just massively doubled down and dedicated to riding the ship, so to speak. And so it's been a phenomenal change that's happened, and to be a part of that change has been interesting, right? It's been a very rewarding experience, tons and tons of work. You know, the new transformation to the cloud has been the biggest push. And it's been really interesting and rewarding to be a part of that change. And so letting our customers know that fundamentally, you know, it's customer first. It's ensuring that we've rewrited the ship, so to speak, and shored up the structure, and then you continue selling and moving forward for our clients that currently count on us, and really the consumers. So you know, it's been interesting. As far as what I necessarily do, it's we have our banking and lending customers. So anybody that does banking, they come in and look for the various products. From risk decisioning to really understanding their customers better, and how to better offer a better product to the customer, right? So it's been a rewarding experience there, and never the same thing every single day.
That is that's well, you know, there's so much technology being implemented across global business these days, you know, certainly in supply chain, which is my background. And those projects certainly are not easy. Most of them are complicated, and there's plenty of cyber concerns and some rules and regulations, including some that are right around the corner. But in that industry, in the banking and lending and the financial industry, I can only imagine you know, how long the checklist has got to be, and all of the rules and regulations given the nature of the sector. So good stuff there. All right, so now let's talk about my favorite part, and so JDog Athens, give me the full name again that folks will recognize.
Yeah, so JDog Junk Removal and Hauling is the franchise system we brought into, and we brought the Athens area.
All right, so Athens, Georgia, home of the Bulldogs, and home of, surprisingly, the business community and even the industrial community in the greater Athens area. It might surprise a lot of folks. All right, so how, so it sounds like from earlier in your story, you got kind of the entrepreneurial bug while you were still in service. So how did you come across this one, and what said, you know what, this is the one?
Gosh, so when I was in the intelligence community, I really enjoyed my opportunity there. So this was I think I joined in August of 2012, and really enjoyed the opportunity there. It was a you know, global travel. but every time I left, I was leaving my wife, and we had our fourth kid at the time, and it just became to get harder and harder, Scott. The kind of running joke was the dragon, she'll bite you, and if she bites you one too many times, then you're done, right? Because you truly, exotic travel, you get to do some amazing things. But I was looking for my exit. And so I first found JDog Brands around late 2015, if I remember correctly. And I followed them for 3 years. Jerry and Tracy Flanagan were the proprietors of the brand. Jerry's story is incredible. Literally a lot of parallels between, my background and his background in that respect in terms of entrepreneurial approach. And so 2019 came along, and it was literally just kind of the perfect storm, if you will, from the funding perspective, from a right point of time. My father and I are in business together. We've just actually recently hired brought on a third business partner. And so we took the leap in March of 2019, went to just north of Philadelphia, signed the paperwork, and haven't looked back since.
So you're poised for this next big growth phase, which I'm really excited for you. And of course, I've been tracking you on social media and kind of seeing you continue to grow, which is, I'm just a big old high five or digital hug because I love it. But just, I want to paint a picture for folks. I've had the good fortune of getting to know you a little bit before the pandemic times and kind of seeing your approach and kind of who you are, your core values. But you've got a big, heavy-hitting job with Equifax that keeps you really busy. You've got how many children at home?
We have 4.
4 kids. Holy cow, I've got 3, and I think when we first met, yes, and I can't even complain because you've got one more than I do. And then you've got a thriving entrepreneurial venture, which of course is another countless number of hours each week. I mean, Grady, you got a couple clones walking around. I mean, it's amazing, just all that you're leading and contributing and giving parts of yourself to on any given day. I mean, how do you get all that done?
So, Scott, I mentioned, what was it, a few minutes ago, when guys and gals, particularly kind of the alphas, A-type personalities of the special operations community, or part of the intelligence community, there's this kind of sexy idea that you're literally doing things that most people don't know about. You're doing things that history will be written about, some 20, 30, 40, how many ever years. And so it was that kind of allure that I see and find connection in the entrepreneurial kind of mentality and approach. And so at first I just did it, because I thought it was needed. And then I realized that, okay, this is kind of neat and it's fun and exciting. It's different. It's a little straining on the family at times, even when I'm home because of the pandemic, working from the basement. But my wife I'm absolutely thankful that she's massively supportive of the ventures and realizes and sees that there's some pretty good potential on the backside here. And I just, again, a little bit of stubbornness, a little bit of just not going to quit, a little bit of just continue moving forward. And so far, the wheel's slowly starting to turn, and we're seeing some significant progress. And it's just, it's exciting. I got to tell you, Scott, it's amazing and exciting. And, I'm really looking forward to what the future may hold here.
Well, I am for you. I mean, it is exciting. All right. So I want to make sure everyone understands, because as your business has grown, you're kind of getting some new areas as well. So just lay out, how are you helping individuals and organizations at JDog Athens right now?
From the hiring point of view, from the labor perspective, we do everything we can to plug into the veteran community as they're transitioning out of uniform. Again, I lived it. I understand it. I know what it's about. I know how difficult it can be. Even taking all the right steps in terms of networking, in terms of education, in terms of grooming, the network, it was difficult. So my vision here, really the JDog brand vision, is how do we help veterans find a place that they can kind of plug into, maybe if they want to start a career with us, if they want to just use us as a transitional step while they go to school, what have you. That's what the brand is kind of holistically and fundamentally about from the labor perspective. From a work point of view, we junk hauling. So if you got that old couch, you got that old refrigerator that's laying around, or if you literally have a barn that's a 5,000 square foot barn, you need it cleaned out. That's something that we certainly can handle. And on the other side of the spectrum to the right, if you have a modular home that's in your backyard that was there for 100 years, so to speak. When you bought the property, you need it torn down. We certainly do that as well. So kind of the full array and opportunity of just cleanup and to make, it's kind of, there's an exciting part about the idea that you can look up after the work has been done in your backyard or stuff's been cleaned up to know that that's no longer bothering you, right? We're always busy. We're full of a day that we've kind of planned about us. And when JDog Athens can come in there and help you clean out the garage, clean out the closet, clean out the basement, it's kind of a neat thing to know that people can sit back and just take a breath and say, that's no longer on the back of my mind, bothering me. I can continue enjoying my life. That's a cool, rewarding thing.
Congrats on all of your growth thus far with the organization. Best of luck as you move into this next business expansion phase, and we're going to have you back on and kind of give us an update. But it is really exciting. All right, so let's make sure folks know how to get into or connect with you and how they can learn more about Equifax and JDog Athens.
So you can always find me on LinkedIn, Grady Brain. You can find us from the JDog perspective, JDog.com, JDogAthens.com. Between those three kind of platforms, if you will, happy to help the veteran community from the Equifax perspective on finding their gig if there's an opportunity there, and then with my network to the JDog brand that my father and my other business partner Jason run. We're always looking for the good person to hire as well. So either one of those three approaches, they can certainly find us.
Outstanding. All right, I'm going to ask you one more bonus question, and I'm hoping that your answer may be a little different than what you've shared. I've got a feeling it might be something similar. But so you've given kind of advice to veterans and to veterans in transition. Now give some advice to entrepreneurs. What's one thing that really sticks out that's put you in position, or what's one thing what would one piece of advice be?
It's got to be massive stubbornness, staying focused on that goal. It's got to be knowing that when to surround yourself with, I've tried this 14 times, maybe the 15th time will work, or maybe I need to make a slight adjustment. And it really is just having the tenacity to know that you have a mission in front of you, that you need to continue moving forward. But it's not always through the mountain, over, under, around. If you have to dig a trench under the mountain, are you prepared to do that? Do you have the climbing gear to climb over? Or maybe you could just take a road that's already paved to the right, to the left side of you to move around the mountain. So it's just being cognizant and aware of your surroundings, knowing that maybe the easiest road isn't always the best, but if you don't have climbing gear or digging gear, then maybe the easiest road is the best to move forward.
Love it. Grady Brain, you did not disappoint. This interview was and conversation really was what I thought it would be. It's a pleasure to reconnect with you, even if it is digitally. Hopefully next time we meet, it'll be in person over an adult beverage or coffee or something. But really admire your journey and admire your willingness to make an impact on other folks as they go through a similar journey, especially our fellow veterans. And just real proud of what you're up to. I can't wait to see what is next, both in your role at Equifax, but also as an entrepreneur. What gets my juices going is JDog Athens. So, and to our audience, we're going to make sure we put everybody's all of ways you can connect with Grady in the show notes and make it really easy. So, Grady Brain with Equifax and JDog Athens, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, sir. Much appreciated. Always a pleasure.
All right. So to our audience, hopefully you've enjoyed that as much as we did. Yeah, something tells me we only got just a tip of the iceberg with Grady. We're going to have a second episode, including getting the skinny on some of those contractor roles that we couldn't get to here today. But hopefully you've enjoyed this conversation as much as I have. On behalf of the entire Veteran Voices team and, of course, Supply Chain Now family of programming, Scott Luton, hey, challenging you just like we challenge ourselves. Do good, give forward, be the change that's needed. And on that note, we'll see you next time here on Veteran Voices. Thanks, everybody.